Welcome back, students. Now this is the time to learn the articulated pelvis or the bony pelvis. Since in the last video we have seen about the sacrum, now we can see about the bony pelvis. Now the bony pelvis, or this is an articulated pelvis which forms the skeleton of the pelvic region, lower abdomen and the pelvic region. Now this bony pelvis is formed by the articulation of the various bone with the help of the left hip bone, the right hip bone, okay. The posteriorly placed is sacrum, and sacrum below is attached to the coccyx. So it is the two hip bones, right and left hip bone, the sacrum and coccyx, they form the bony pelvis, okay. Now this bony pelvis is a basin-like structure. It has a cavity, okay, and in this cavity most of these viscera, that is the pelvic viscera, urinary bladder, then the uterus, vagina in case of female, the rectum and anal canal, they are well protected here, okay, they are very well protected. Now bony pelvis also provide the site where the uterus, the fetus develops in the uterus, and this plays an important role in the child bearing, the bony pelvis, okay, bony pelvis. Then bony pelvis also provide the site for the attachment of the various muscles, strong muscles of lower limb. As we have seen, they are taking origin from the outer surface of the ilium, ischium and the pubic bone. Similarly, the muscles which are present inside, that is iliacus, it is also the piriformis, the coccygeal muscle, they are all taking origin from that of the bony pelvis, okay. Now, but most important function in female, it is the passage of the fetus at the time of the childbirth. That is the very important function, okay. Now the bony pelvis also plays an important role in receiving the load at the sacrum, that is at the lumbosacral joint, and then it transmits its load through the ala of the sacrum to the auricular surface of sacrum to the sacroiliac joint, and then it passes to the hip joint and to the femur. So the bony pelvis is also involved in the transmission of the load, okay, of the body weight which is exerted above the lumbosacral joint. Now this bony pelvis is divided into two parts, the greater and the lesser pelvis, okay. It is divided into two, the greater and lesser pelvis. Now the greater and lesser pelvis, they are separated from each other through the pelvic brim, okay, or the inlet of the pelvis, okay. So this area where I am putting my hand is the inlet of the pelvis or the pelvic brim. Above this, okay, above this is the greater pelvis, and below this is the true pelvis. Greater pelvis is also sometimes called as the false pelvis, and this true pelvis is also called as the lesser pelvis. So the true pelvis is here, and it has a cavity, okay, and the lesser pelvis are the true pelvis, and the greater pelvis and false pelvis, they are separated by the pelvic inlet also, brim of the pelvis, pelvic inlet it is, and then the greater pelvis is having the wall. Let us see, come first to the greater pelvis. Now the greater pelvis is this, above where there is the inlet of the pelvis, and I will tell you the inlet of the pelvis first, so that we can demarcate what lies above this inlet and what lies below. Now the inlet of the pelvis is bounded posteriorly by the promontory of the sacrum, that anterior margin of the sacrum bulging, okay, projecting anterior, which is called as the promontory. Then ala of the sacrum, okay, anterior surface or the ala of the sacrum, then sacroiliac joint, and then the arcuate line, iliopectineal eminence, pecten pubis, and then the pubic crest and pubic symphysis. Okay, once again I will see it. Okay, tell you. Now, from here again I will start. It is pubic symphysis, pubic crest, pecten pubis, that sharp margin, iliopectineal eminence, a bump between the ilium and the superior ramus of the pubis, that is iliopectineal eminence, and then arcuate line which goes right up to the sacroiliac joint, then the ala of the sacrum and the promontory of the sacrum, and same is here on this side. Okay. Now this is the boundary of the inlet of the pelvis, which can be seen in this articulated pelvis. Okay, this is the sacral promontory, which is more prominent in this pelvis. Then this is the ala of the sacrum, sacroiliac joint, and then from sacroiliac joint right up to the pubic symphysis, it is the linea terminalis. I will tell you the different names of this part. Okay, arcuate line right from sacroiliac joint up to that of the iliopectineal eminence, then the pecten pubis, which is a sharp boundary of the superior ramus of the pubis, pubic crest, and then this pubic symphysis. Okay. Now this demarcate, okay, the plane, okay, a plane which is just having this means boundary. Above is the false pelvis, okay, or the greater pelvis, and below is that of the true pelvis or the lesser pelvis. Okay. Now see the greater pelvis. Now the greater pelvis is bounded posteriorly by the ala of the sacrum, this area where I am putting my finger, and on side by the iliac fossa, and anteriorly there is no wall, bony wall. It is deficient because here it is the anterior abdominal wall will come. Okay, so the greater pelvis walls are not defective. It is not absent here onto the anterior aspect, okay, anterior aspect, and that's why it is called as the false pelvis. Let us see the lesser pelvis or the true pelvis. Okay, true pelvis or lesser pelvis. It has an inlet of the pelvis, which I have just told you about the boundary of the inlet. Then there is an outlet of the pelvis here, okay, and this outlet of the pelvis is bounded anteriorly by the lower margin of the pubic symphysis. This is pubic symphysis, the lower margin of the pubic symphysis. Then this is the conjoint ischiopubic ramus, ischial tuberosity, and in the living condition, from the ischial tuberosity up to the sacrum and to the iliac crest here will extend a strong ligament called as the sacrotuberous ligament. Okay, from lateral margin of the sacrum, lower part, up to the ischial sacrotuberous ligament, and then the lateral margin of sacrum, and then the coccyx. Okay, coccyx. So these are the sacrotuberous ligament and coccyx. These are the boundary posteriorly. So this outlet of the pelvis is a diamond shaped space. Okay, so I am showing you the outlet of pelvis. Again, the pubic symphysis, conjoint ischiopubic ramus, ischial tuberosity, and then the sacrotuberous ligament and the coccyx. On the posterior most is the coccyx is present here just. So this is the boundary of the outlet. So you have seen the boundary of the inlet of the pelvis and outlet. Now between the inlet and outlet here, okay, between this inlet and outlet, whatsoever space lies is called as the pelvic cavity. Okay, the space of the pelvic cavity. So that is the bounded by inlet and outlet is the pelvic cavity. Let us see the walls of the pelvic cavity, okay, bony walls. Okay, I will tell you the bony wall of the pelvic cavity. Now this bony wall posteriorly is bounded by what? It is bounded by the sacrum, the pelvic surface of the sacrum, which is concave and smooth, lies anterior to the, on the anterior surface of the sacrum. Anterior surface or pelvic surface. This is there. On the side it will be the greater sciatic notch, the ischial spine, sacrus tuberosity, and structures which are passing through the greater and lesser piriformis muscle, and then all they will come to lie in the lateral wall of the cavity. And then here it is the part of below the arcuate line. This is the part of the ischium, okay, ischium here, and then it is the inner aspect of the ischial tuberosity, inner aspect of the ischial tuberosity, all these, okay, sacrospinous ligament, sacrotuberous ligament, all this is the structures which lie onto the wall of the pelvic cavity. They lie in the wall of the pelvic cavity. Right. So pelvic cavity lies between, as I said, between inlet and the outlet of the pelvis. Okay, inlet and outlet of the pelvis. Right. Now this is the time to know the anatomical position of the pelvic articulated pelvis or the bony pelvis. Now the articulated or bony pelvis, okay, if you know how to put the sacrum in the anatomical position, exactly that is also the anatomical position. If you can put the sacrum here in articulated skeleton of the pelvis, then you can put the pelvis also. This is just to be keep it in anatomical position, the pubic tubercle and anterior superior iliac spine. This is pubic tubercle and this is anterior. They should lie in the same vertical plane, okay. That means you bring the anterior superior iliac spine with this vertical plane so that they both lie in this. In this condition, what happens that the anterior pelvic surface of the sacrum is facing downwards and forwards. It is facing downward and forward. So this is the anatomical position. Now in this anatomical position, if I show you from this side, you can see that promontory and the body of the sacrum, they are facing upwards and forward, okay. In this position, they are facing upwards and forward. In this position, the inlet of the pelvis, okay, which we have just defined, it is also facing, okay, upwards and forward. It is facing upwards and forward. It is inclined anteriorly. It is facing anteriorly and forward, right? So this is that oblique position. Now we will try to see some of the distance, the plane, the axis of the inlet and the axis of the outlet, which I will show you with the help of a diagram. Again, this is the osteology book by me, published by PP. Thanks to the publisher for using this book. Right here, if you see the I will show you here the this is the longitudinal section, a theoretical section which will show you this is the false pelvis or the greater pelvis, and this is the lesser or the true pelvis is here, and this is the plane of the pelvic inlet and plane of the pelvic outlet. Ischial tuberosities are here, and thus this is the pelvic cavity, okay, which is basin like. Okay, this is the most simplified theoretical diagram. Okay, pelvic cavity never lies like that. It is inclined. Okay, you can see this. Mid-sagittal section, the L4, L5, sacrum and coccyx are here. Okay, in this diagram. And you can see that this is the superior border, say for example, of pubic symphysis here. Then starting from this sacral promontory here, S1, okay, you can draw this line. This is an oblique line which is the inlet of the pelvis. Okay, so this is the axis of the inlet of the, the inclination of the inlet of the pelvis right up to the superior margin of the pubic symphysis. So with the horizontal line, this inlet of the pelvis makes an angle of 50 to 60 degree. So much inclined. So when you stand in anatomical position, our pelvis makes that is inlet of the pelvis makes an angle of 50 to 60 degree. Similarly, this is the outlet of the pelvis, this part, okay, this is the outlet. This is from the lower margin of pubic symphysis to the tip of the coccyx, okay, and this is making a 10 to 15 degree with the horizontal plane. This was making 50 to 60 and 10. And then this part in front of the sacrum, okay, and behind the pubic symphysis, between inlet and outlet, this cavity is the cavity of the pelvis. This is the cavity of the pelvis. Now, if you just select a central point in the inlet of the pelvis, and okay, then if you prolong a line along the central point of this inlet, it will cut to the tip of the coccyx, and this is called as the axis of the inlet. Similarly, if the central point, if you project it upward, it will cut to the sacral promontory, and this is said to be the axis of the outlet. So this is the axis and this is the axis of the inlet, okay. And then if you join the axis of, the axis of the inlet, okay, or central point to the axis of the outlet and draw an imaginary line, then this will be something like this. See here, the axis of the pelvic cavity now it will give. So inlet and outlet axis, they will give the axis of the pelvic cavity here. See this, was the inlet, this is the outlet, and this line here, okay. This is the axis of the pelvic cavity. Now what is the importance of this axis of the pelvic cavity? Why I am telling you this axis? Because along this path of the axis of the pelvic cavity, there is the movement of the child during the birth, okay. It is the line of the childbirth, okay. This child moves along this line. Now that's why the axis of the pelvic cavity is important. So we have to know this dimensions of the pelvic cavities, okay. For if a lady is pregnant, the obstetrician, okay, they will always measure the various distances, axis of the inlet and the axis of they will measure the axis of the inlet. For example, the axis of the inlet here, one important axis which is, dimension, not axis, one important diameter which is mentioned is the anteroposterior diameter, okay, which starts from the sacral promontory, the body of the S1 margin, anterior margin, right up to the pubic symphysis. This is the anteroposterior dimension. Similarly, another dimension which is measured is called as the transverse diameter. And how to measure the transverse diameter? The maximum distance, okay, the maximum distance will be the transverse diameter, and then the oblique diameter is also measured from one sacroiliac joint to the iliopectineal eminence of the opposite side. Now this dimension, if they are within the normal limit, this will give a clue to the doctor that the childbirth may be normal, okay, childbirth may be normal. For example, the measurement of the anteroposterior dimension should be between 105 to 110 millimeter in a female. Okay, in a female we are talking. And the transverse diameter should be still more than this. It should be 125 to 130, and oblique dimension should be 120 to 125 millimeter. Don't think that it is centimeter. It is millimeter. And in similar way, one has to measure the dimension of the outlet of the pelvic, which are less important than that of the inlet diameter because of the mobility of the coccyx. Okay, coccyx can move around the side wall, except the twistial tuberosity. Okay, there is nothing much here onto the outlet. But then the measurement of the outlet, which can be, they are 110 to 118 in the transverse diameter, and anteroposterior is around 125 millimeter. Okay, right? So these are the dimensions which a obstetrician will measure before the childbirth. Okay, childbirth, because I said that one of the important function of this is the childbearing, the pelvic cavity. Okay, it is the pelvic cavity. So you know now what is the true pelvis, what is false pelvis, what is inlet of the pelvis, what is outlet of the pelvis, what is the axis of the pelvic cavity, what are the different dimensions which are to be measured, and lastly now we come to the difference between male and female pelvis. Okay, let us see the difference between male and female pelvis. Okay, I will just bring the two male and female pelvis here. See this? These are the two pelvises. One is from male, another is from female. Now some of the important difference which you can notice, which when I have kept these two pelvises, okay, side by side. This is the male pelvis, which is say broader, bigger, and then not broader, that is bigger, heavier, and quite muscular attachment are very prominent, not seen because it is polished. Okay, so muscular attachment as compared to the female pelvis, which is smaller than the male pelvis. Okay, though it is having the muscular attachment, but those muscular attachment are not that prominent, and it is lighter, while the male pelvis is the heavier. So this is a general, okay, but this is not important, not very important. Most important, parameters by which you can, by looking at this, you can just find out that which is the male and female pelvis is the subpubic angle. See, this subpubic angle means angle below the pubic symphysis made by the two conjoint ischiopubic ramus. These are conjoint and this is the pubic symphysis. Now this is less than 60 degree or 50 to 60 degree. When we spread our index and the middle finger, that should accommodate this. Okay, so it is accommodating this, right? So this indicate that roughly that angle, subpubic angle in a male is around 50 to 60 degrees. Okay, but at the same time, when you will see a female pelvis, you will see the difference. Okay, it is quite evident. Okay, this is conjoint ischiopubic ramus and this is pubic symphysis, and if I try to put these two fingers here, okay, this is quite wide and this is around 90. Okay, and usually it accommodates your thumb and the index finger. When you spread your thumb, so it is quite wide. Okay, so on one side it is 50-60, another side it is 90 and above. Okay, 90 and above. Why it is so? Why the subpubic angle is broader? Because the transverse diameter and anteroposterior diameter are as such, the pelvic cavity is bigger in female. okay, though it is a smaller pelvis, but the dimensions of pelvic cavity are bigger in female. Here the pelvic cavity, if you see from inlet, this is the inlet, it is almost heart shape, and here if you will see the pelvic cavity, here it is oval in shape, the bigger one, okay, it is with the bigger because it has to bear the child, okay, right. And then if you see in case of male, the size of the acetabulum as compared to distance from that of the pubic symphysis to the anterior margin of the acetabulum, acetabular size is bigger, okay. Why the acetabular size is bigger? Because it has to accommodate the bigger head of the humerus, and here in female the acetabular size is smaller as compared to the distance between the pubic symphysis and the anterior margin, which is quite large. See this? The distance between pubic symphysis to the anterior margin of the acetabulum, okay, it is quite large, much larger than that of the diameter of, this diameter from here to here, it is quite small. This again indicates that the pelvic cavity is bigger, okay, because the distance between pubic symphysis to the anterior margin is large in female, and see here it is quite small as compared to the, so this also you can measure by scale or just see by the naked eye, okay, naked eye. I was saying that it has a large acetabular fossa because there is a large head of the humerus, because the weight of male is more, so to bear this weight or transmit the weight onto the femur and then to the leg, okay, a large acetabular fossa is needed, okay. Now since the angle in the female is quite wide, subpubic angle, so the conjoint ischiopubic ramus are shifted towards the lateral side. So this obturator foramina is triangular, you can see here. This obturator foramina is triangular as compared to this obturator foramina, which is oval. It is oval because here the conjoint ischiopubic ramus, they are close to each other, so giving a larger acetabular foramina. It gives a larger acetabular foramina. Now then another lesser important difference is that within the greater sciatic notch, you can compare the greater. This is the greater sciatic notch in case of the male, and this is the greater sciatic notch, this one, this is the greater sciatic notch in case of the female, which is the wider and bigger notch, okay, and shallow. This is in female, okay, it is quite wide, some greater, but here in case of male, you can see that greater sciatic notch is very narrow, okay. Again, this is due to the wide pelvic cavity. In case of female, it is the wide pelvic cavity which is there, okay. So these are the some of the important differences between the male and female, okay, pelvises, okay. I just did some research to find the difference between male and female and to just very quickly find out the which is male and which is female, and for that I have used two parameters or evolved. One is the height of the pelvic cavity, okay, and how to find out the height of the pelvic cavity? I just took the distance between the iliopectineal eminence here, see this iliopectineal eminence, and to the ischial tuberosity, okay. So with the vernier caliper, this height of the pelvic cavity was measured, and then what was measured? This is the arcuate line, the distance of the arcuate line was measured, okay, length, right from this the sacroiliac joint right up to the is this iliopectineal eminence, this length was, and an index of this was obtained, okay, and this gave a very quick and very accurate method to identify the male and female pelvis, okay, male and female. Why these two parameters I thought of and evolved? This was because it is based on the bigger pelvic cavity. Height should be bigger, as well as arcuate line was giving a clue to that the dimensions, okay, transverse dimensions or the circumference of the pelvic cavity should also be bigger if it is bigger arcuate line. So the index of the height and the arcuate line length was a very rewarding parameters, okay, by which we could find out the sex of a male and female. And for that, articulated pelvis was not needed. Even if you get one hip bone, you can measure the height as well as the length of the arcuate line and find out the sex by a single hip bone also, okay, by a single hip bone. Thank you very much for watching this video on the difference between male and female pelvis. What is the pelvic cavity, what is true pelvis, what is the lesser pelvis or the greater pelvis, and okay, outlet, inlet, axis of the pelvic cavity, okay, and the various dimensions of the outlet and inlet. Thank you.